All right, good morning. Actually, a beautiful morning out there, and at least one more to come, courtesy of high pressure over the region. I'm going to start here, though, looking at the week behind us, and it turned out to be well warmer than normal across almost all of Michigan and much of the Great Lakes region. Those are the values here on the graphic on the left. Mean temperature departures from normal, generally from about 1 to as much as 5 degrees warmer than normal. So we've had a pattern this growing season for much of the spring and the summer thus far, and we've gone from back and forth, from sometimes from much below to much above, and back and forth, and this week was no exception. On the right hand side here are our precipitation totals. This is actually through yesterday morning. We don't have the values overnight. There wasn't that much rain in the state yesterday, but it depends. The rainfall totals here greatly depend on location and ranged from less than 1/4 of an inch over central and eastern portions or southeastern portions of the lower peninsula to, in some cases, more than 2 inches. We had a large area across the upper peninsula, central and eastern UP that did get more than 2 inches, which was at least the heaviest rainfall. Also, some of that spread southward again into extreme northern lower. And I'm going to talk more about the moisture because the situation with water and moisture availability varies greatly across the state. Our seasonal growing degree day totals starting on May 1 are, with all this back and forth from much above to much below, are surprisingly pretty close to the normals. And it ranges from 30 or 40 units behind normal in northern parts of the state to almost the exact opposite, 30 or 40 units ahead of normal across the south. So in terms of calendar days, we're actually pretty close to what the climatology would suggest for late June. So that's so far so good in terms of our heat accumulation this year. The concern, of course, for many areas is water and moisture related. And on the left hand side here, I've got a graphic that shows the 60-day precipitation departures across Michigan and surrounding areas, and a couple areas to highlight that well, I'm sure are not a surprise to anyone, but you can see that very, very different situation across much of western and northern lower Michigan. We've got surpluses of almost 4 inches. This is going back essentially to the middle of April and then forward up through the present. And it's been wetter than normal for much of the growing season in that part of the state. It would also include portions of upper Michigan. But in contrast to that, for much of the southeastern lower, from the thumb southward down to the southeast corner, we've got deficits. Same thing is true in portions of western upper Michigan, including the Keweenaw. But some of these deficits now have reached on the order of 4 inches again, and that's just in the last 60 days. And as a result of that, last week for the first time, we had portions of Michigan show up on the U.S. Drought Monitor. That's something we haven't seen since last year. It's been some time, again, with all of a lot of heavy precipitation last fall and some over winter. But the map here on the right, this is the most recent issue. There will be a new one of these today. But for the first time, a lot of yellow and some brown showed up in the Midwest here over the last week or two. So it's not just Michigan, it's other portions of the Midwest as well that have experienced persistent dryness, and as a result are now a little bit of concern about being too dry. You can see that we've got an area of D0 or abnormally dry, and then D1 moderate drought conditions as close as northern and northeastern Minnesota here, just to the west of the UP. But the areas here just to our south over Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio just showed up here over the last week, and it does again include some very small portions of extreme southern and southeastern lower Michigan, and that's something we're going to want to keep an eye on, and that's directly related to the precipitation pattern that you just saw, combined, of course, with what we've talked about in previous briefings, with all of the potential of evapotranspiration, a lot of atmospheric demand. It's been a little bit less here, certainly over the last couple of days, thanks to cooler temperatures, but for a lot of June, the month of June, the PET rates have been abnormally high. On our forecast, or our weather map here this morning, we've mostly high pressure across the Great Lakes. You can see that centered here over northern Missouri. This area of low pressure up over James Bay is the system that went through overnight Monday into Tuesday. It's slowly making its way away, and there is a possibility little weak troughs spinning around this may set off an isolated shower here mainly across eastern parts of the state. But the vast majority of the state, like yesterday, is going to be fair, mostly sunny and dry. One exception, it will be noticeably warmer. Our high temperatures today, we've been below normal for the last couple of days, and we're going into a warmer than normal period. That's going to be one of the themes here, certainly in the outlook. But we will see temperatures jump back to, well, the upper 70s north to maybe the low 80s in the south. So several degrees warmer than it was yesterday and on Tuesday, and we'll do a little bit better than that tomorrow as, again, the warmer than normal pattern here develops over the region. The next weather system that will impact us, you can see out over the northern plains in southern Canada, the prairies provinces here of Canada. That's headed our way for later tomorrow and into Saturday. And that right now looks like certainly the best chance, or certainly the most significant chance for any kind of precipitation widespread that we'll be facing here over the next week. By tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, you can see a lot of more green here, indicating precipitation probabilities with both a warm front approaching from the west, and then behind that a trailing cold front with this low pressure system over southern Canada. So tomorrow, expect more of the same, at least early. It will be warmer. Our nighttime temperatures will be a few degrees warmer here overnight tonight than they were today. And it'll also be warmer during the day tomorrow. We'll be well into the 80s for high temperatures tomorrow ahead of this system. And then the moisture with this arrives beginning in the far western portions of the state, the western upper peninsula, by afternoon Friday tomorrow, and then continuing overnight tomorrow night and then into early Saturday. One thing to note about this system, as we've looked at it here or tracked it over the last several days, it's coming a little bit earlier than we thought. And the other trend is that there is a great deal of water vapor and moisture for the system to work with. It has available to it, but the forecast models have backed off a little bit in terms of the amounts, especially across northern parts of the state. But as we look at the week in overall, this is by far our best chances for rain. And for the areas of the state that definitely need some water in the topsoil, this is what you want to be watching or paying attention to. But again, the best chance for most areas of the state will be overnight tomorrow night, Friday into Saturday. There is a possibility with this, given strong dynamics in the upper air and on the water vapor I mentioned, we could see some severe weather with this system, and it has to do with the timing. These fronts will be approaching here during the peak heating, peak instability time here to late tomorrow afternoon and early evening. That's certainly a factor. So keep an eye on that. The biggest threat, if we have any severe weather, likely would be high winds, but maybe some hail would be possible, and some briefly heavy rain. It looks like most of the thunderstorms associated with this will be moving from one place to another, but if you're under the right cloud, there will be, given the water vapor available to this, the rainfall rates, at least temporarily, could be very, very heavy with this. It's just that they won't stay around in any one place too long. By Saturday morning, you can see a lot of movement of the system off to the east, some lingering showers and a potential thunderstorm risk here still across far eastern portions of the state. But in general, high pressure will be moving in from west to east during the day, especially during the afternoon and the evening. And then that sets the stage for probably a fairly extended, fair, dry, and warm type of weather pattern here beginning on Sunday and continuing into next week. And that's certainly the precipitation totals before I get to the medium range. These are the forecast precip amounts by Thursday morning of next week. And you can see they range from less than 1/4 of an inch across northern portions of the state, the smallest chances, and then increasing as you go south, 1/2 an inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch across portions of the south. Right now, again, the greatest totals are expected to be over the far southwestern lower peninsula. And I think right now that looks like a pretty good bet. But note that these amounts are a little bit less than they were in previous forecasts. The models, again, have backed off a bit. But this will be, the vast majority of almost all this precip you see here will be here over the next 24 to 48 hours, Friday night into the Saturday morning. Medium range forecast guidance, if we look at the jet stream forecast down here in the lower left, you can see a big ridge over the middle, right over the Great Lakes region, and that means one thing on the surface, and that is warmer than normal temperatures. And that's certainly the theme in both the 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 day time frames are almost identical here in the upper right, very, very high chances of warmer than normal temperatures. And that actually, this is the medium range. It starts on the 29th. We're going to see warmer than normal temperatures even the early to middle part of next week as well. Probably looking at daytime values well into the 80s and lows in the 60s. So several degrees above normal, or where typical this time of the year. Just as importantly, down here in the lower right, the model forecast also suggests that we'll be trending below normal on precipitation totals. And again, both these medium range products are suggesting that as well. Right now, after Saturday or after Friday, Saturday, there really isn't a clear idea or a suggestion of anything major in terms of a weather system, at least through next week. So we're going to probably have to make do with what we get here overnight Friday and Saturday in terms of moisture. And then finally, we've got a new long lead outlook that was issued last Thursday by the NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. And of course, we always look for the long leads. We always look at the El Nino Southern Oscillation, or ENSO, what's going on in the Pacific. We have been neutral, which means no El Nino, no La Nina. We're somewhere in between. That's been the case here for the last several months. But down here in the lower right, this is a time lapse of the last couple months of sea surface temperatures in the Equatorial Pacific. You can see that over the last few weeks, we've seen the development of some cooler than normal water right here along the equator. And you probably remember from our discussions of this before, that's one of the signatures of a cool event or a La Nina event possibly forming. And so our official forecast now, the consolidated forecast, putting all the different pieces of the outlook together, looking over the next several months, it increases the likelihood of, we still have neutral conditions to deal with for the foreseeable future for the next few months, but the blue bars here are the probabilities of a La Nina. The reds are of the warm or the El Nino event. You can see that by fall here, there's a fairly good chance of seeing at least maybe a marginal La Nina event develop. So that's something we'll be watching, but it likely will not have any impact on our weather till at least the late fall or the winter. So probably no impact, no influence at all really on what we're looking at here this summer. As a result of that, our long lead outlooks here for at least the next few months are almost totally based on forecast model output as well as long-term trends. So we've taken ENSO, one of the most important tools in the toolbox, so to speak, for the long lead outlooks. It's really not there, at least for the short term, and mostly relying again on forecast output. For the month of July, the adjusted outlook or the new outlook here, mean temperatures are forecast to be above normal, almost the entire lower 48 states, including Michigan. Our precipitation, Michigan is in the EC or equal chances category, meaning really no forecast direction. Equal chances of below, near, and above normal precip totals, so not much to talk about there. For the July through September 3-month period, mean temperatures also forecast to remain above normal. And then for precip, you can see on the wetter than normal conditions, or the situation favoring above normal precip totals, has shifted northward, at least to cover southern parts of the Great Lakes region. So we'll call it normal to maybe above normal precip totals. But this theme here, certainly the warmer than normal and normal to above normal precip, that's something we've seen in most of the outlooks here for the last few months. So no big changes there. The big issue though, I think it really is warmer than normal temperatures are certainly in the outlook. So summarizing, beautiful day today, and for most of tomorrow, and then our big chance for precip or moisture this week, late tomorrow evening especially, into Saturday. Watch possibility maybe of some severe weather. We'll have to keep an eye out on that, but it is, and then just as importantly, it's probably the only significant water that we'll see here, at least chance for precipitation for much of the next week. Look for temperatures warming back to above normal levels as early as tomorrow, certainly by Sunday, back into the 80s, and lows into the 60s over most portions of the state. So very, very, very summer-like forecast, and certainly warmer and drier than normal is the pattern or trend that we're looking at here for the foreseeable future. With that, I'll start with a reminder or announcement for next week's virtual breakfast. Next Thursday morning, we've got Eric Karbowski, and he's going to be talking about farm stress. Fairly important issue here, certainly as of late. That's next Thursday. And with that, I'll wrap up here. I see we're getting close to the bottom of the hour and thank everyone for their attendance and attention here this morning.